I built and sold a seven-figure business from nothing, and then I sold it for even more. I'm going to give you the exact blueprint I followed in this video. Every move, every mistake, year by year, so you can do in months what took me a whole decade. Now, this is everything, so let's jump in.
How did you start building your online business?
Yeah, so the first year, I did some very strategic things that was very different than most of the gurus out there say that you're supposed to do. So to set the stage, at that time, I was playing these $150 gigs, which is the equivalent of somebody else doing a day job in whatever industry that they're in or the niche they want to start it with. And at the same time, like I was getting like really tired because I was working my butt off, and I knew I wanted to do an online business. I wanted something more leverageable using my talent and skills and interests. So I started posting these free YouTube videos online, and the first few months were like nothing. Like it was like me and my mom watched them, and my mom probably bounced after like 30 seconds of the video. On paper, I was probably, insane for doing it because I wasn't getting any traction. But for whatever reason, they just sort of popping off after about 3 months. I had made a lot of videos at this point where like 12 people watched them, if that. But finally, after 3 months, we started getting a little bit of traction. We started getting some views on YouTube, started getting some email list signups. So this was instrumental because what I did was I did not monetize for a full year. It was actually 14 months before I actually charged people. And I built an audience and trust in the marketplace. And I very, very, very much pushed the free line. And so one of the biggest takeaways that I would recommend people do, if you can do it, if you still got another source of income going on, you don't need to absolutely pay your rent or your mortgage or feed your kids like immediately, right? See if you can push the free line, because this is one of the unique differentiators that can put you on the map, different than all the other people who are trying to shill and sell immediately right away. It's a way to build trust in the marketplace and build an identity for yourself. And then also another really cool factor there, when you're not actually charging in the very beginning, what happens is people share your stuff. They'll send it to 10 of their friends who are also interested in the same topic, which is something called viral coefficient. And that's what happened in the very beginning. So I built a sizable following in the very beginning, yet at the same time making no money. But don't worry, that's coming real soon here.
That's very smart. You built a niche audience and you gave them free value. How did you know what to sell them when you did launch a product?
Yeah, so about 14, 15 months in, I started getting requests from people who be like, dude, we love your free content, but like, can you give us a course? Can you give us something step by step? And, honestly, I didn't know what people would buy in the very beginning. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I used a combination of 3 factors to figure out what was the first product I should sell. And this is a key takeaway that I want people to write down. First and foremost, I validated it through data. So I went into keyword tools and I saw, what are people actually searching for in a high volume? That was number one. Okay. Number 2, I took a look at like our inbox, like the conversations we had with our leads at that point. I don't even call them customers. And I saw like, where do they have questions? Where do they have problems? What keeps coming up over and over again? So I took the quantitative, the data from the keyword tools, qualitative, actually talking to the customers or the leads, right? And then last, and this is a unique thing that I did that not a lot of other people do, was I attached a little bit of a unique hook to it, okay? And so it's not enough to necessarily just like deliver the solution. You want to give the customer a sense of, when you're actually delivering the solution, that this is going to be fun or a super cool way or a unique or easy way to implement the solution you're providing for them. So in my industry, I was like, hey, you know what? Like, people really look up to these famous jazz piano players. Maybe I'll teach people like how to play like these people, how to actually like improvise and play piano like these people. So it wasn't just like, here's how to improve your piano playing. It was like, learn how to play like these famous people that you aspire to be. And that lit our customers up. They're like, oh, dude, like this is going to be super fun. I get to learn how to be a better musician, and I get to like, sort of like indirectly like hang out in the mind of like these heroes I looked up to. Yeah, hell yeah. So those combination of those 3 factors, and I hope you're writing this down as you're watching this, normal direct response funnels are usually getting like a conversion rate of like 2%. but our first product did 10% in the very beginning. So it's 5% higher than like your average person who's launching a product. And remember, like up to this point, I'd been making like $150. I'd practice for like 10 hours before the gig. I'd go drive to the gig, play the gig for 3 hours, drive back from the gig. So spending like tons and tons of time for $150. And in that first week, I made $6,000 just from the first product launch, which was like a total paradigm shift for me in that like I could make so much money so quickly compared to the $150. And then also that like strangers would actually give me money. People I'd never met face to face would give me money on the internet, which was completely wild. And so that first year after that, we went to the point where we were basically making like 5 or 6K per month net profit, which was a awesome start. And I'm so happy that it did not monetize in the very beginning, because this is massive. When you can do something like this, push that free, this is how you get people like knocking down doors to become a customer of yours, which is like a great way to start a business.
How do you go from that 6K product launch monthly revenue to a growing business? What did you do next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, listen, 5 or 6K is cool. It's not like a, oh man, this business is crushing type thing. I was still actually gigging a lot at this point, just because I was like, I could live off of this, but this isn't that baller lifestyle that I hope maybe, one day we could potentially get to. It just wasn't enough. And so I asked a mentor, I was like, hey man, like what do we do next year? Because this is nice, but this isn't like, like billions and billions of dollars. Like what do we do next? He's like, well, dude, you only are helping people solve one problem, and then you're kind of like sending them off afterwards, right? You need to help them like on a daily basis. You need to figure out a solution where you can charge them every month and provide a ton of value for them, help them solve their problems. And I was like, oh man, like what do we do here? I was scared because I was like, oh, will people actually pay me every month? I taught some piano lessons, one-on-one consultations before, but I was like, are these strangers going to like be okay with me billing them every month? And of course, these sort of like limited false beliefs you have in the very beginning, you got to kind of shut them off when you're first starting and trying to scale a business. Like it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to be like, I don't know if I can do this, but like there's got to be a part of you that's got to be like, just try it anyways. Like, what's the worst going to happen, right? So let's pretend that like, of that email list at that point what we had, which is maybe like 3,000 people. Let's say like all 3,000 said no. Okay, cool. So I put a little bit of time into it. They all told me to kiss off, and so be it. That's the worst that happens. I lost a little bit of time, and 3,000 people just didn't respond to me, versus like maybe there's some potential upside there that could happen. So I launched it, didn't know what was happening, but boom, it totally took off. So we went from 5K a month to 30K a month overnight, literally just that first launch right there. And the product name that we had was Premium Jazz Lessons, and it was a continuity program. So at this point now, we actually have a real business. Still not making like a ton of money, but $30,000 net profit, especially from those like $150 gigs I was doing. That's a big change right there. And so we had now 400 to 700 people who were paying us every month. Plus we had the one-time sale coming in as well from those other products. And this is the point now where I was like, this is getting a little too big. I can't do this. I was doing like 2 full-time jobs at the same time. And I had to stop touring at that point because I was like, okay, clearly we have some traction. We have people who are like expecting us to kick ass for them every month, help them solve their problems. Like I'm going to have to put some real time and energy into this, which was a great decision. I mean, obviously, I missed seeing the world, so to speak. We did already visit a lot of countries at that point, so it wasn't like a complete dud at that point. I played like 2,000 gigs previous, but stopped touring and then devoted all my time and attention into building out this soon to be hopeful beast.
So at this point, you have 30K per month. Did you reach a bottleneck at this point with your membership site?
No, the membership site kept on growing. That was cool. But where the bottleneck came in initially was that like I was working a ton of hours and I was making a ton of content. And we had a couple people working for us at this point, but I was still doing a lot of the work and especially a lot of the content creation. So I was like, I need to figure out like what are like small things I can do that hopefully can start making a lot more money. So I started thinking about this problem, and I didn't have any answer yet. But while I'm thinking about it over the course of a couple of weeks, I was driving by Target, and I needed a loaf of bread. So I went in there, and I don't know, a loaf of bread is like what, $2, $5, whatever it is, not very expensive. And I left. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I left Target, and I had spent over $400 and bought 20 things. It's like, how the hell did I go from the goal of having like just this $5 loaf of bread purchase to like buying all this stuff at Target? And I was like kind of happy about it too. I wasn't like, oh my God, like Target took advantage of me. I was like, oh, Target made it easy for me to buy the things that I actually forgot that I wanted or like needed, or I had these problems in the past, but I forgot about them. And like when I'm walking through the aisles, like, oh yeah, there, I'll throw that in the cart. And I started thinking about it. I was like, how did Target engineer that for me, where I was like happy to like spend 20 times more? And again, I was like, they're worth $100 billion. And my business, if you do the multiple on it, we were making $30K a month. It was probably worth, I don't know, $1 to $1.5 million at that point. I was like, they're worth a lot more than me. Maybe they know something about sales that I don't. So I was like, when people come and they buy from me, they can only buy one thing at a time through our cart. We don't have that Target level experience. So I was like, well, let me see what happens if I kind of design my shopping cart like Target, which allowed them to add more things to their cart if they wanted to. So I rebuilt our checkout, and I added some upsells in there. I added some downsells in there, and I added some order bumps. And lo and behold, Target knows what the hell they're doing. And so our average order value, meaning each time that someone actually checked out with us, went from $59 to $92, which is a 55.93% revenue increase for the mathematicians in the crowd. Now, that in itself is very cool. I just gave myself a 55.93% raise just from 2 days of work. And this is the first time I had this sort of like understanding that, hey, you know what? Like maybe you don't always have to like work a million billion hours in order to actually make a lot of money. This was 2 days of work. And then I gave myself hundreds of thousands of dollars of raise per year for essentially infinity, as long as I kept on running this business. Like that's an excellent trade-off. So shout out to the bread and Target for that one.
With your funnel built out, it seems like you're able to make enough profit. So how did you scale your traffic?
Yeah. So at this point, again, we still have this constraint happening where my time is very occupied making content. And we were doing YouTube organic content in the past. I had been doing all those videos that I talked about, but I was like, oh, dude, like I'm already working 60, 70 hours a week. Yes, I can do like another 10 or 15. I'm young. I can hang. I got a screw loose, whatever it is, right? I can do it, but like maybe there's an easier way to do it. So I started like looking at, well, what content are we already creating for our membership? Maybe I could like grab some of those samples and turn them into little like 5-minute lessons for people on YouTube. Let's see what happens. And they worked really well. And I'll tell you why they worked well. And so for the people watching this, I would absolutely implement this. If you're making content inside a portal, a private portal, grab little pieces of it and put it out in YouTube. So what I did was I created these little sample lessons, like I mentioned. And the first thing that we did is we made sure that they were titled around SEO search terms. So new people who had never heard of us, if they happen to be searching on YouTube or in Google, they could actually find the stuff in itself. And they'd be like, oh, that was kind of cool. So now they're introduced to our ecosystem, right? Top of the funnel, but also they're introduced to our products at the same time. And then the people who are already in our ecosystem, it functioned as a sales mechanism to have them move lower into the funnel and be like, you know what, like that was a super cool 5-minute lesson. I'm going to subscribe to this membership for a month and let's just test it out and see what happens. And so it helped us turn them from like a lead into a customer. So we had all these mechanisms that were happening at the same time. And the big takeaway there that I want you to think about was finding what you're already doing and seeing if you can repurpose in a very strategic way.
Sounds like you put a lot of time putting into content. How did you get some of your time back on this?
Yeah, so this was a very interesting thing that I did, and it's something that very few people do. And I know this was one of those big moments that if people replicated this, it will make all the difference in their business. So for a lot of people out there who are making content, especially for their own personal brand, you think that, like, especially once you start getting a following, you think I am the brand. Like, people are coming for me. But ultimately, the audience doesn't care as much about you as you think that they do. So I was talking with one of my mentors from back in the day, from music school, and I was telling him what I was doing. I was like, dude, I got this like site. I'm making some good money and like people are like really successful. He's like, that's awesome. I'd love to teach you something like that. I was like, really? So I was like, all right, man, let's do a product together. Let's see what happens. And so we launched, I made a product with him. I didn't know if it was going to work. I thought I was, like people love Steve, right? They tell me that my red hair is like semi-okay on YouTube and sometimes they buy from me, right? But jokes aside here, I was like, all right, well, let's just test this out. We'll see what happens. It'll be embarrassing if it doesn't. But like, I don't know, man, Steve's the brand. But this is the very big unlock that I want people to think about. What we did is I made this product where somebody else was the face. I just produced it, used my systems, whatever, but I wasn't even in the product. And that one sold for 40% more than when the one it was just me. Even though we had the proof, people like Steve's stuff, but 40% more. Somebody else was the face. So, outside of the little ego check that happened of like, hey man, maybe Steve they don't care about you that much. That was actually a gift because I realized that people don't care about you. This whole focus of like personal brand, me. What people care about is they care about the results that you give them. So as long as the person is cool and somewhat approachable who's actually delivering the information or the service, if you get them the results, that's the thing that they care about the most. Now, the second key writer downer, the second key takeaway was that I use something called fame adjacent. Remember how I talked about hooks earlier, how I like to use hooks to sort of accelerate the demand for a product. So what I did was my mentor was the piano player for Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers. Now, notice I didn't say, hey, we did a product with Greg Allman or somebody from the Allman Brothers. We just got somebody who was a sidesman, a fame adjacent person. So he's got some cachet, some kind of a cool hook in the marketplace. My audience loved the Allman Brothers. They thought that they looked up to him, they admired him, and I'm bringing them access to somebody who knows about the Allman Brothers, plays with Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers. So it was exciting for them, and it was a product we made where we solved people's problem. So both of those right there were huge hooks and huge levers that made the audience absolutely desire that product. So again, if you are just like hooked on your personal brand, I got to do this, me. No, you don't. Find other people who are equally as talented, if not more talented, and have some sort of cachet in the marketplace. Use them inside your brand, and that can be a huge lever to get you off this sort of like content hamster wheel that a lot of personal brands have.
So now that you have other people that are faces of the brand and new products getting your customers results, would they stop buying, or how does that affect your business?
Yeah, so initially I was like, okay, cool. Like we've got these like powerhouse people who are making these courses now. This will be enough for our customers. They're not going to want to buy again for a long period of time because we've delivered so much badassery inside our courses. That was a horrible limiting belief that definitely limited my money. And I'll tell you how I solved that and how we increased our revenue by a lot. So we had just released this product. We had sold really well. And the next day, it was on one of my competitor sites who had a comment section. And I noticed that 3 of our customers had commented that they had just bought our competitors' products like the day after we had sold this monumental, amazing course to them. And I was like, wait a second. Like I thought that like they'd be like busy and they wouldn't want to consume any more information because they bought from us. Why are they now buying from the next person? And I was like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe information buyers actually just like information. They want to consume. And, I'm an information buyer, right? Like I like learning new stuff. I'm like, maybe that's just the pleasure of what it is. And hopefully we implement, but a lot of it is just like acquiring a new information. So I thought too many new products overwhelm my audience. That was a wrong belief. What I discovered was that our best buyers have an absolute insatiable appetite for new information. That goes for anywhere in info product space is that the best buyers will constantly buy over and over again, as long as it's a good product and you're actually solving those problems for people. So what happened was that we doubled the rate in which we were releasing products and courses previously, which drastically improved the revenue in the business and the net profit for me as well. So in order to do that, I had to really systemize how we launched our products. And this is important for people listening. You know, a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, were kind of right brain or creative, and we like to just put our little parsley on, and only we can put parsley on the right way or whatever. But there's actually a systemization that you can do with how you do things. So we systemize how we do our landing pages, how we do our pre-launch emails, how we do our upsells, how we do our VSLs, et cetera, et cetera. We systemized everything, and we were able to increase the rate at which we launched our products to be twice as fast. And eventually we got it even faster than that. But it was crazy because it was like, I'm launching twice as much products. I have even less to do with them. It's less stressful. It's going twice as fast. And I made $100,000 more per year, me personally. And we made even more money than that, but I'm paying them out to other people, but I'm making more money myself and I'm doing less. Like this is absolutely insane. And we're making our customers happy. We're starting to build a team that's like, we're paying them well, which is super awesome, which means we're going to have people stay with us for a long period of time. Like everybody was winning through this. So the big takeaway was that you can systemize your product launches the way you do products. You can actually increase the rate in which you do your product launches as well, especially in the info product space. Because I'm telling you right now, customers who buy information, the best customers, they have an insatiable appetite for more information. So whatever you think the line is, you probably could push it further.
So it sounds like you have a great system for launching new products. And I know there's one product specifically that really changed the trajectory of your business. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So at this point, we've now doubled our product launches. We're doing a lot more inside the business. And we did this group coaching program, and it sold pretty good. We got 65 people. It's pretty niche, the product. It was sold. But what I realized, I was like, oh man, like we don't have anything brand new to sell them after they complete this program, right? Something where we can like help them achieve even a better result. And I had been hearing about high ticket in the space, but I, for whatever reason, hadn't implemented it before. And I was like, shoot, like we got to get this together very quickly. So in about 72 hours, I put together a high ticket program. And this was very different from the past, where I would spend a lot of time thinking about marketing angles and all the details we had in our info product system of how we launched things. This was just like thrown together very quickly. And, it was like I spent a day on the copy, and then I spent 2 days figuring out like, how can we deliver an amazing experience for our clients? I was like, this probably ain't going to work, because normally I'd spend more time on this, but screw it. Let's just see what happens. And this was one of those massive paradigm shifts inside the business. So we sold 17 of those 65 people at a price point that was 1,000% higher than the group coaching program. So it was like, wait a second, I don't need to, or the team doesn't need to spend a ton of time to launch a very successful product. That was the first takeaway. Second of all, we could actually charge very high premium prices if we delivered somebody an amazing result. Another sort of limiting belief takeaway from there. It was a major winner. The high ticket program inside our business, like, changed everything. Before it was like definitely like this, but then the high ticket program was like this. It just was like, it changed everything as far as the numbers inside the business. And just to give you a little bit more of the math behind it. So oftentimes a high ticket program, especially if you're creating a great high ticket program, you can sell for 100 times more price point wise than like an info product, a do it yourself info product. And that's essentially what we were doing. And the part about it that just is like a brain, like I can't believe this is happening, is that you're charging people 1,000 times more, and they're even happier because they get a chance to work with you one-on-one. They get a lot more accountability. They get a lot more personal attention. And so you're making a lot more money, and the customers are happier. Like, whoa, this is crazy. So if you're anybody who's watching this right now, if you do not have a high ticket program, please implement one in your business. And we can, if you leave a comment in the comment section, if you have more questions about how to actually do that, I'll make future videos where we can talk more about that in future content. But the short takeaway right now is like, do a high ticket program. It will change your business.
This is a direct contrast. When you bootstrapped your business, you relied on free traffic like YouTube, SEO. But now that you're making a lot of profit, how did you approach your paid ad strategy?
Yeah. So previously, we hadn't done a lot of paid ads up to the point. I was doing like kind of small experiments here and there, and they were profitable. But one thing that happens with organic content, if that's your number one traffic source, is eventually you can get to a cap, especially if you're doing SEO based content for years and years, because eventually you kind of like get all the high intent keywords, the high volume keywords. And then so your activities, if you're creating more and more content out of like less visible keywords that have less volume, it's sort of like gets diminishing returns. So I was like, this is a problem. Like we need to figure out another traffic channel that's hyper scalable. And so we were doing well with YouTube. I was like, well, let's just see what happens if we do this YouTube ad. Like it seems like kind of like an adjacent type solution. And so I created this ad, and, obviously I worked hard on it. I tried to do it the best I could, but I'd seen some of these ads out here that were like almost like car commercials with like fast cuts and high production and stuff like that. And this was not this. It was good copywriting, and I think it was entertaining for our audience, but it was fairly low production. It was like me at the piano and then me like face on camera with some like fun words that kind of like I hoped our audience would like. And initially, you're kind of nervous. You're like, wait a second, this isn't high production. Like, is this going to work? I worried, like, is this too simple? Surely you need something polished, that fear before you launch anything. Fortunately, I did not listen to that fear. I said, screw it, let's try it. And the ad was a total blockbuster. The market was just mesmerized by it. Just all I did in the very beginning is I just played this like super flashy lick in the very beginning. So if you're in another marketplace, just something to grab their attention in the very beginning that gets them interested. That's how you start the ad. And then I talked about this cool thing I'm going to do for them after that, and went off like crazy. And the ad itself got over 1 million views, which is not that common. It's like that's like a super outlier in the ad space, because oftentimes like ads will fatigue way earlier than that. For whatever reason, the audience loved it. It's kind of almost like our organic content, but just in the form of an ad. And it became our number one traffic source. So the big takeaway for people out there is, first of all, diversify your traffic sources as much as possible. B, if you're doing only SEO based content, at a certain point, especially if you're in business world, that's going to provide diminishing returns. So you're going to want to add additional traffic sources. And third of all, like just test out these asymmetric bets that happen from time to time, right? Sometimes so what was the worst thing that was going to happen? I put out this ad. I spent a few $100s on ads. I spent a little bit of my team's time and my time, and nothing happens. Okay, cool. So I lose $1,000. Like, yeah, that would suck, whatever. But the upside is that you made millions of dollars, which is what, of course, happened on that ad. So please just test out different ad platforms. You're going to surprise yourself. There's some amazing things that can happen when you do.
So you have the ads, the free traffic, the products, and especially with the high ticket offer, how did you structure the phone sales in your business?
Yeah, so with high ticket, you're usually going to be selling over the phone. And this is different than like info products, which is usually just having that checkout, that where nobody's taking their orders. They just, your customer does it themselves by entering their credit card information. But high ticket, usually selling on the phone. So at this point, and this is kind of crazy, I'm already at year 9 in the business. I have read a lot of books. I've talked to people, but I actually haven't worked directly with a coach up to this point, which is so silly. I don't know why I didn't do it earlier, but decided to apply for a coaching program, and I applied. And the person who I thought I was going to talk to on the phone was not who got on the phone in the very beginning. I got on the phone with what was called a setter. Okay. And a setter is basically somebody who's designed to sort of warm up a prospect, check them out, make sure they're the right fit, or disqualify the ones that aren't. And initially I was skeptical. I was like, wait a second, do they have me on the phone with their junior? This doesn't seem right. I don't know about this. And realistically, I don't know if I would have bought the high ticket business program. I wasn't sure at that point. They put me on the phone with the junior in the very beginning. Oh, this isn't good, right? But something weird happened. The setter made me feel really good, listened to exactly where my problems were, built a relationship with me. And I went from like, I'm not sure to like, oh, dude, this sounds awesome. Yeah, man. And so when I finally got on with the closer, it was like, just take my credit card information, like take my money, right? And I was like, whoa, I went from skeptical to like sold just from a setter. Why don't we have something like this in our business? So I was like, all right, let's try it out. And I installed a setter just as a test inside our business, and it took off like a rocket. And our close rate, which was already pretty good at 50% when we were just having people on the phone with closers the whole time, went from 50% to 62%. And that's literally just putting one person in front. And that was like me sitting down for a few hours working out a setter script, and then boom, huge lift in the revenue in the business, and especially in the high ticket, just by installing that setter in place. So takeaway, if you're not currently using setters, please do just make sure that they're using some scripts in advance. It will make a massive difference in your close rate.
So it sounds like you have a really good machine going now. What are the next things you did in the business?
Yeah, so things were definitely heading in the right direction. They had been for a number of years. Now, at this point, I'm sort of transitioning from content creator and manager more into like high level growth marketer and CEO. And what that is, and this is one of the things that I want people to really pay attention to, what I was doing during this time, because this is the difference between me working on like hundreds of dollars per hour jobs, or what many people do inside the business, like $10 per hour jobs. But I had moved up the leverage stack up to this point. So I was moving from the hundreds of dollars per hour type activities to now the $1,000 per hour type activities. So a lot of what I was working on was just working on fixing the constraints that were happening inside the business. So like, for example, if you're working on your lead generation process and you've got something in place, like what's the weak link there that could potentially like get you 20 times the current leads you have? So I was working on these like big things that would create these asymmetrical returns inside the business. So I started refining our sales process. Again, I added in those setters like we talked about. I made our sales scripts even tighter, which increased our conversion rate even more. I worked on improving the fulfillment inside the business. And I just spent like a few days, like I interviewed some customers who were already in the program. I was like, listen, I know you like this, but like, tell me everything that you would wish that we did more. Like, what could we do to provide you even more value? And that was a super useful use of time, because I raised our renewal rate just from just talking to those customers for just a few hours and be like, what do we not do? What could we do better? And again, small amount of time to basically 2xing our renewal rate. Like, that's a no brainer. Those are like those type of things where I spend 2 hours, and then all of a sudden now we've had hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue just by having those conversations. So it's finding these like leaks in your funnel and figuring out where are the moves I can make that would add hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe even millions of dollars of revenue onto your business. But you kind of need like the space to do that. If you're working day to day all the time in the business, you're the one who's actually like making all the content and running all the management or whatever it is. You're actually working in the business. You don't have the space to find these like big moves that you need to do that can really dramatically grow the business. The other thing I did, because I had worked on fixing all these constraints, we started getting a lot more lead volume inside the business as an overall whole, and especially inside the high ticket. So I hired more top coaches. And again, fame adjacent, right? Model that, do what I did inside your own business. And so it was very cool. So then what happened is, not only did we hire better coaches and more coaches that were great at fulfilling, but then when we would tell our customers over the phone, hey, we just hired XYZ who plays with this famous musician, people were like, really? I get to work with him? Hell yeah. Like just take my money, which is kind of like what you want in the sales process. So everything just started getting better that way. And I just gave you a whole bunch of takeaways as you're listening. It's like, please be taking notes, and at least hopefully you'll apply all of them in your business and make a gazillion dollars, but at least apply one of those, because they're all gold.
Now that you're focusing on higher leverage tasks for your business, do you have any tips for people who want to free up their time?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that people are doing, I was still doing a lot of the content at the time, like I mentioned in the past, but what I did to get myself off that content hamster wheel and get other people building everything for the business for me was I started systemizing exactly how I did everything. Now, some people listen to this, they're like, oh no, it's my taste. Nobody else can make an ad like I can, or nobody else can write copy like I do. Nobody's got the eye for design, knows what colors I should put here, there. Those are all false and limiting beliefs. And I know that because I used to have those beliefs as well. But when I started asking myself, I was like, well, how am I making those decisions? And I started writing it down and thinking about it, and then handed it off to someone else who was like, surprise, surprise. They can make the same decisions as me if I actually break down how I'm making these decisions. So what I did is I systemized everything, every decision I made in the business, how other people were making decisions, how they were doing stuff. I automated all the winners, the ones that actually worked very well. And I got my hours down to the point where now I was able to work only about 4 to 8 hours a week in the business, which was super cool. So big takeaway there, my friends, is systemize everything. This is how you start freeing yourself up, and you can work on these higher leverage activities that we've talked about so far.
Now that the business is more automated and you have more free time, what happens next?
Yeah, this is where we had a kid for the first time. Congratulations, Steve. You are now a dad, right? Which was great because kids need love and attention and time. And I was very happy that I had built this system that basically kept on running. So I'm still working. I like to work, right? I want to continue to make sure the asset is strong. I'm not working a lot of hours though, which was super awesome, and got it to devote to our newborn son in the very beginning. And so that's one of the huge levers that happens when you actually automate a business. Now, some people listen to this and be like, oh yeah, passive income, do your thing or whatever. Like this is not, yes, this is passive income, but this is a well-structured business system. It's not the BS passive income that you see a lot of, like, just do one thing and then you're like on the laptop at the beach doing nothing, or like, drinking Corona in your backyard, like none of this BS. These are real business systems. We have full lead generation systems, vetted products that our customers like, automated systems, clear sales processes that were designed without me, making sure that fulfillment was strong, our team members were fully trained, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Multiple traffic channels, yes, I guess that is passive income, but that's a real business system that provides passive income and time freedom. So that's what I was doing. We had those systems in place, and I was being a dad for most of the time, at least for the end of year 10.
And the weekly operations of the business, what type of things did you work on?
Yeah, so when I was working, again, I'm trying to find these sort of asymmetrical things that were going to make the big levers. So in this case, I'm occasionally stepping into some management roles. I'm talking with people and figuring out, like, where are some leaks? How can we strengthen our SOPs? Making sure that the stuff is getting stronger and stronger. I'm still a marketing geek. I like figuring out little fun things I can do and test out new ideas. Also, it helps that when you figure out these little like asymmetrical things inside a funnel, they can lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars more per year. So I'm doing these little funnel experiments. I like selling on the phone. I like talking with customers. That's a skill set that I enjoy developing is selling. So I was doing a little bit of sales every once in a while. Sometimes we give our customer service, our salespeople some time off here and there, or I would test out a new thing in the script. I want to see how it would work, get a pulse for what was going on in the business. I'd sell maybe an hour every couple weeks or something like that, just kind of test some things out. But the rest was basically handled by the team or automation, which was sort of, what we had been building up to that point. Again, one thing before I want to make sure that we understand here, this one right here is probably like a low 6-figure upside, but these right here, okay, for example, if let's say I bumped up the conversion rate from 62% to 75% by doing these small tests in the sales right here, at the volume of leads that we had going through our funnel, that's a mid 6-figure to potentially 7-figure upside in the business by doing something like this. Same thing with the funnel experiments as well, right? If we had figured out how to lower the cost of our lead, and then we were able to then double our advertising revenue and get 40% more leads into the funnel, and each lead is worth, let's say $15, and we have 1,000 leads coming in per day. That's big money. So again, I'm choosing experiments right here that have at least six-figure upside for the potential for what I'm actually doing during this time. Now, for the management thing, inside the day-to-day of the business itself, like I said, it didn't have as much upside, but in terms of strengthening the enterprise value, which we're going to talk about just in a second, because there's something cool that's going to be happening. That's where the real money comes in terms of the management and strengthening the SOPs, is in the enterprise value.
So it sounds like for the last 10 years, you're just building. What's going through your mind for what you build next in the business?
At this point, I've been doing it for 10 years, like you just mentioned. And a few years early, we had already hit our FU number financially. We had this system now that basically could run without me. But this is the part that was kind of weird. Obviously, it was nice to have all the money in the bank or whatever, but I didn't realize that as I was like sort of building it on a day-to-day basis and trying to just, I kind of had blinders on. I would just work on constraints and growth. Like that's it every day. And just that process in itself created this really cool business that had a ton of enterprise value. And now the indirect benefit of having a business with enterprise value that can run without you, that makes a good amount of money, right, is that it's now a sellable asset. So I was like, let's test it out. I wonder what it could get out in the marketplace. I was just curious. So I partnered with Walker Deibel. Walker's the famous author from Buy Then Build, one of the best M&A books out there. And I was like, Walker, can you help me figure out what this business is worth? Can we sell it for something? He's like, yeah, man, let's just make sure there's financials in place, which we did. We had clear financials. We had our systems, like I talked about. We had a great team. Okay, that's important. The processes, like I mentioned, and then also this growth story, all the day by day, just working on constraints and growth. Those are my two mantras I was doing, led to a business that basically just had increasing revenue, increasing net profit for 11 years straight. And so it was built to sell without me realizing it, just sort of created this asset that was sellable. And so we took it out in the open marketplace, and we had 7 buyers who made an offer on it, which is totally wild. Even me thinking about it, it's been several years since it happened. And as a result of that, when you have 7 people competing, it created a bidding war. So we got even more than we listed it out in the marketplace, which was very cool, especially considering that when you look back, literally, man, I was just trying to start an online business where I could just make a couple $100 extra a month. I was thinking man, I wish I had maybe some better coffee in the morning out on the road, or occasionally have some better lunches or whatever. I'm just going to keep touring, doing my thing. An extra couple $100 would sure be nice. Right. And I would have laughed in your face if you would have been like, dude, you're going to make a bunch of money from the business as it's going, and then you're going to be able to sell it for 7 figures. I just didn't have the belief system in place, or even the comprehension to even dream of something like that. I would have laughed in your face if you're like, this is the results that would have happened.
A lot of people don't think that way, even if they're in the middle stages you talked about. They don't even know they could exit. So I like how this gives a clear path at different stages.
Yeah, absolutely. So, listen, there are a bunch of takeaways that people can implement. I mean, I probably gave about 100 different methods and systems that people can implement into their business, whether you implement all of them, one of them, whatever it is, or even just gives you a framework to kind of think about the growth of your business, or how I made decisions, or how I solve problems. There's something for everybody at every stage of business in this video. Now, that being said, I understand it can be tough to remember all this stuff, especially if you're watching a video on YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually put the whole slides and all my notes from this video. I'll put it as a free download. You can actually get it in the description for the video on YouTube, and I'll also put it in the first comment as well, so you can actually implement it into your business. All right, man. Thank you so much for watching. For all the viewers out there, have a good time, grow, make some money, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.